5 minutes ago, Crimea was cut off by the armed forces of Ukraine and the occupiers on the peninsula got a good beating. Is this really a new special operation by our forces? Putin hasn't been informed about this yet. At this very moment, the dictator is bowing to Orbán. Did he bring a ticket for Trump to Budapest? Belgium is disrupting the negotiations. Russian money doesn't stink. Britain can't take it anymore and is rushing into the fight. The launch of a super powerful weapons production for Ukraine. Czechia is catching up with us. A triumph of the armed forces of Ukraine near Kupiansk. Putin's army has been broken down to molecules. Revenge for lies. And all of this happened just now. Hello, I'm Darina Hatsakalo and we're getting started. Urgently, the armed forces of Ukraine struck a drone storage site in Crimea. The Russians are bewildered and Ukrainian forces hint that this is just the beginning. According to preliminary information, several air defense targets were hit at the airfield, including Panzer S-1 and Tor M2 systems. After suppressing the enemy's air defense systems, a hangar storing enemy Orion and forepost drones was destroyed. In addition, Ukrainian defenders also struck the enemy's command and control tower and a military Kamaz truck. The consequences of the strike are still being clarified, but the Russians definitely have reason to worry. The double evil has indeed united. Orbán has arrived to meet Putin on the carpet. This is already the 14th meeting between the Hungarian Prime Minister and the Russian dictator, so as usual there was no shortage of flattering words.
Ukraine is Hungary's neighbor. Therefore, Hungary fully feels the impact of the Ukrainian conflict on itself. Among other things, we are suffering significant economic losses. Hungary is interested in peace, and we sincerely hope that the recently announced peace initiatives will ultimately lead to results.
Most importantly, Orbán emphasized that Hungary still offers Budapest as a venue for peace negotiations. In response, Putin thanked him and clarified that it was Donald Trump who proposed the idea of holding the talks specifically in the Hungarian capital. He
immediately said that we have good relations with Hungary, you have good relations, and so do I. So, I propose this option, of course. We are happy to agree, and to wherever I align myself.
Getting carried away with the topic of discussing Ukraine, Viktor Orbán almost forgot that he had come to resolve the issue of oil and gas supplies to Hungary. It should be noted that before this, the official went on a tour of Central Europe with the aim of acquiring Russian oil refineries under sanctions, since not so long ago it was Hungary that managed to secure an exemption from US sanctions for so-called Putin's black gold. A stunning triumph for the armed forces of Ukraine. In Kupiansk, our forces blocked the Russians in the northern districts of the city and cut them off from supplies. Putin's army fell into a trap.
They carried out active offensive operations at the beginning of November. During these offensive actions, they began fighting in the city center and tried to break through to the south. And it seemed that the tide had turned and the city was almost taken. They even started reporting this, first through Gerasimov and then through Putin. But the situation in the city changed not in their favor.
As a result, the number of Russians in Kupiansk is slowly decreasing and reinforcements are not arriving because they are being destroyed on the approaches to the city. The Kremlin's plans are falling apart right before the eyes of the whole world, and
it's ironic because Putin has already made a statement about the encirclement of Ukrainian battalions. But there is no way to confirm this.
At the same time, Britain is launching large-scale production of interceptors for Russian Shaheds. Now, Ukrainian Octopus drones will be rolling out of the factories literally around the clock.
Mass production of interceptors is planned, which could reach several thousand per month. The manufactured equipment will be delivered to Ukraine to strengthen the protection of our skies.
Another ally of Ukraine has also made a decisive breakthrough. In the Czech Republic, a fundraising campaign has been launched to strengthen our air defense. The campaign called Charlie 1 was launched by the civic initiative Skupina D. The fundraising was supported by the Chief of the General Staff of the Czech Armed Forces and honorary head of the initiative, Karel Žeka. Judging by the fact that just recently the Czechs raised almost 550,000 euros in less than 2 days for the production of the Ukrainian Flamingo missile for the armed forces, a batch of interceptor drones will likely follow soon as well. An unexpected turn of events. Belgium has said it could derail the peace agreement regarding Ukraine. The first details have already been announced by the country's Prime Minister Bart de Wever.
The hasty advancement of the proposed reparations loan scheme as collateral damage would mean that we, as the European Union, are hindering the achievement of a final peace agreement.
It should be noted that in October, EU leaders tried to agree on how to use 140 billion euros of frozen Russian assets to provide a loan to Ukraine. But the plan stalled because Belgium did not give the green light. No fewer than 5 sources from diplomatic circles in various EU countries insist that the real reason for Brussels' resistance is that it holds Russian assets, wanting to continue adding them to its own budget. The taxes from them. This money is hard to track, but diplomats who question these figures use sources such as the Kiel Institute, which estimates Belgium's total commitments to Ukraine at 3.4 billion euros between the start of the war and August 31st, 2025. For comparison, the tax from Russian assets in 2024 alone amounted to 1.7 billion euros.
Things are heating up over Washington. A real political storm is brewing in the U.S. Capitol. Secret negotiations between American officials and the Kremlin have leaked online. Trump's position is so shaky that it seems the very foundation beneath him is starting to crack. Ukraine is boldly advancing its own agenda, and now the world is holding its breath in anticipation. Will this diplomatic scandal become the point of no return for the U.S.? Details coming up soon.
Donald Trump's special envoy Witkoff is an extremely pro-Russian diplomat. Rumors that Steve likes Moscow, where he happily eats chebureki for breakfast, have been circulating for a long time. But now, Bloomberg has published a transcript of Witkoff's conversation with Putin's advisor Ushakov, which took place on October 14th. The American directly suggested to the Russian side that they get ahead of Ukraine and talk to Trump before his meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump's friend gave the Russians a tip. He told them exactly what words to use to win the heart of the American president.
Witkoff is completely and unequivocally playing on Russia's side, actively offering his strategic moves and dedicated services, going significantly out of his way to fully accommodate Russia's interests. And around Trump, he is meticulously building very bizarre, truly phantom-like and semantically complex castles against Ukraine. Well, all right, this story became public.
This leak is one of the loudest scandals in Trump's circle during his second coming to the Oval Office. Political experts are surprised at how the Russians are manipulating the Americans.
In the phone conversations, Ushakov appears to be the real professional who, for example, has no problem telling Witkoff that Russia is doing things to please Trump and to show its appreciation for him. The peacekeeping efforts even included canceling the Russia-Arab summit. But that's a lie, because it was actually the leaders of the Arab countries who refused to go to Moscow, since they started to focus primarily on Trump and only then on Putin. But Ushakov, with his characteristic composure, calmly presents the significant defeat of Russian diplomacy to the relatively inexperienced Witkoff as a generous gesture of goodwill emanating directly from the Kremlin. And indeed, there are quite a substantial number of such revealing episodes throughout these extensive conversations.
The sensational leak should have led to personnel changes in Trump's inner circle, but the American president surprised journalists with his seemingly indifferent attitude. Any methods will do, he said, Trump assured.
This is a standard thing, you see. He needs to sell this to Ukraine. He needs to sell Ukraine to Russia. That's exactly what a deal maker does.
Amid the scandal, Trump sent Witkoff to Moscow for negotiations, and his new representative Driscoll back to engage with the Ukrainian side. According to Donald, there is no longer a deadline for Zelensky to sign the framework agreement. However, analysts claim that the US continues to put pressure on Kyiv. The 47th President of America is not against meeting with Zelensky, but only after he puts his signature on the required document. Meanwhile, the media report that Ukrainian diplomats managed to fend off and revise at least an entire section. 3 points of the document, which was written and translated by Dmitriev and Witkoff. And during his first visit to the Ukrainian capital, Daniel Driscoll assured Ukrainian soldiers that they would inevitably be defeated.
The Russians, as I have said repeatedly from the very beginning, never planned to follow any plan, even if all 28 Russian points had remained completely unchanged. Because the goal of this plan is not to freeze the Russian-Ukrainian war, nor to end the Russian-Ukrainian war. The purpose of this plan, which was devised by the Russians, is to buy time. And to prevent Trump from imposing more sanctions against the so-called Russian Federation right now.
The White House is already concerned that the Kremlin might completely reject the updated peace plan. Now it's interesting to see how Stephen Witkoff's trip to Bilokamen will end. What will he be treated to, and what awards will be given to their loyal supporter from Trump's inner circle?
Europe is on the verge of panic. The Kremlin is preparing to expand the war, and the next target could be the EU itself. Armored vehicles and troops. Europe is launching a military Schengen. Now the movement of equipment and units between countries happens without delays. And defense enterprises are working at full capacity. Will the EU be able to seize the initiative and thwart Putin's plans? The answer is in the following report. The danger from the Kremlin is getting closer. The European Union is preparing for confrontation with Putin. NATO is concentrating weapons and manpower near the borders with Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. At the same time, members of the European Parliament are working seriously on a military Schengen.
We must show Putin that Europe is no longer associated with powerlessness and democracy is not a sign of weakness.
The Schengen is being prepared in close cooperation with the North Atlantic Alliance. Brussels is taking decisive steps. Among them is a plan to modernize the defense industrial complex. The European Commission has announced deadlines and presented a new package of measures for military mobility. This will enable the European army to move quickly across EU territory without facing excessive bureaucracy, especially in the event of a possible threat from Russia. In
the defense industry, we will be strong if we are industrially independent, autonomous, and less fragmented.
Ukraine is acting as an ally. The country will have access to defense logistics.
We want to expand military mobility corridors in Ukraine. This would serve as a security guarantee, meaning we could provide faster support if needed.
First and foremost, it is necessary to modernize the infrastructure, digitize the procedures, and increase funding. One of the key challenges for EU countries remains ensuring the rapid transportation of troops to potential combat zones.
We can respond to these threats either symmetrically or asymmetrically. We have the full arsenal of tools at our disposal.
At present, the threat to the Baltic states remains. And in the event of a sudden escalation, for example, the French army would need to cover about 1,500 kilometers to come to the aid of its allies. Despite the fact that light units are able to move relatively quickly, heavy equipment requires significantly more time and preparation.
Currently, European bridges, roads and railways are not adapted for the rapid movement of tanks, soldiers and military cargo. If transported from the west to the eastern flank, tanks can get stuck in tunnels, in complicated bureaucracy, and bridges cannot withstand the passage of these vehicles.
With the experience of the Russian Federation's war against Ukraine, the European Union has paid significant attention to modernizing critically important infrastructure. Transport routes will be upgraded to dual-use standards so that they can simultaneously serve both civilian and military needs. The military Schengen plays a particularly important role in strengthening the defense of the eastern flank, especially for the Baltic countries and Poland.
Everything depends on our position. Will we be able to deter the enemy, or will we encourage them to aggression?
But not everyone sees the danger coming from Russia, or they simply try to close their eyes to reality, maintaining close ties with the Kremlin dictator Putin.
We are talking about an armament program that will require us to spend everything down to the last thread. And this concerns all of Europe. From the statements of several influential leaders, it is quite clear that they want to start a war.
Germany is doing everything possible to help Ukraine equip the armed forces with long-range missile systems, as well as organizing joint production on our territory.
For several months now, we have been working intensively with the Ukrainian government on the implementation of long-range weapons projects. The Ukrainian army is being equipped with such systems. We have agreed not to discuss the details publicly, as we believe that the Russian side should not be informed about the level of our military support. I can only say that we are doing everything possible to equip the Ukrainian army with weapon systems that have the necessary range. And the number of such systems will increase over the coming weeks and months, and if necessary, up to the production of such weapons in Ukraine.
The European Union's military budget is planned to be increased to more than 17 billion euros. In total, at least 100 billion euros are needed to modernize bridges and tunnels and to fully launch 4 corridors for military needs. Based on Ukraine's experience, Putin's words cannot be trusted.
There's no need to make things up and then base opinions about Russia on these inventions. There's no need to create the image of Russia as an enemy. We made up the idea that Russia wants to attack NATO. Have you completely lost your minds or what? You're as dumb as this table. Who came up with this? This is nonsense, you understand? Utter rubbish.
While the dictator openly lies to journalists, members of the European Parliament are calling for regular joint exercises and stress tests. They want the European Union to follow NATO's example so that rapid response forces can quickly react to Kremlin aggression.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Urgently, it seems a coup is brewing in Russia. Not long ago, there was the unboxing of General Gerasimov, and now the so-called architect of Russian aggression is in the spotlight, Patrušev. He is the one behind the military operation plans, controls the security forces, and sets the tone of fear and pressure within the country. However, he does all this for a lot of money. The army fights, while the money ends up in their pockets. Putin's closest circle is leading him by the nose. When the long-awaited moment comes and the Russian elite finally collapses, we'll talk about this and more. In the report, coming up in just a few seconds.
This is how we drink. We found a puddle in the trench, we're scooping it up. Look how many leeches there are. So we drink what we can, we'll figure it out later.
Our command abandoned us. We've been 2 months without food, without any pleasure, without shells, without bullets, without anything. They say we're sitting here, but not all of us are. Take us in with you, so to speak. We can't advance because we have nothing to fight with. We can't leave either, because they won't let us out from the border.
The Russian people are suffering in the rear. Utility bills keep coming regularly, so the military machine's treasury keeps getting filled.
There are no clean storage facilities. There is no outdoor lighting in the military town. The roads in the military town leave much to be desired.
And this is currently happening while Putin's close associates are getting increasingly rich financially.
How should we feel about this?
All it takes is to deliver beautiful propaganda speeches to Russians from the TV screens.
Historical facts unequivocally indicate that pushing Russia away from the strategically vital Black Sea coasts has traditionally been consistently viewed within Anglo-Saxon policy as one of the absolutely key and paramount objectives, a long-standing geopolitical aim.
The propaganda is one thing, but the family of Putin's closest ally, Nikolai Patrušev, the former FSB director, longtime secretary of the Security Council, and one of the most influential figures in Russia's power structure, lives by its own rules. The family of the main KGB figure of old Russia has amassed real estate worth almost 14 billion
rubles, which is the official currency of the Russian Federation.
This impressive collection of elite properties is carefully distributed among relatives, and especially generously among those who, on paper, have no formal connection to any declarations, so that no one would find it, but journalists conducted an investigation, and they made everything public.
The plan amounts to $25 billion. As of today, it has already been exceeded.
Almost half of the assets are registered to Marina Artemyeva, the wife of Dmitry Patrušev. He is his son, and she has managed to give birth to 5 children for Dmitry. Marina is not legally his wife.
Which is advantageous for Patrušev Jr. because when he files his asset declarations and property statements, everything registered to his secret partner is, accordingly, absent from these declarations.
Artemyeva grew up in a typical one-room Khrushchevka apartment in Elektrostal. She worked in ordinary positions until 2009, when a meeting took place that, to put it mildly, changed the trajectory of her life.
These include estates in Moscow and the Moscow region, as well as apartments with views of the Kremlin.
Just a year later, she became the director of a trendy TV channel. And a little later, billionaire Igor Kesaev, the very same wallet of the Patrušev family, transferred to her a share in world fashion. Quite an extraordinary stroke of entrepreneurial luck, isn't it? Since then, Artemyeva's business has been growing rapidly, as has her real estate portfolio. From 2 apartments across from the Kremlin to plots worth hundreds of millions in the elite Serebryany Bor and Istra areas, plus office real estate in the skyscrapers of Moscow City. And in 2021, she was so lucky that she got a mortgage at just 2% annual interest from Roselkazbank, the chairman of the supervisory board of which, of course, just happened to be her common-law husband.
First of all, it's important to understand that ensuring security is a continuous process.
Another roughly 4 billion is registered to Nikolai Patrušev's first wife. A few more billions for the younger son's wife?
Andrew, that is absolutely correct indeed. Family. A fundamental cornerstone of our lives, providing unwavering support, love, and a sense of belonging that shapes who we are.
It was always very important for the nobleman Patrušev. After all, they are the ones who hide his billions earned with blood.
I have decided to conduct a special military operation.
Patrušev is one of Putin's most trusted people since the St. Petersburg days of the 1990s. He is a supporter of forceful solutions.
First of all, it wasn't an explosion. Secondly, it wasn't planned. And I think it wasn't done very precisely. It was an exercise, there was sugar there.
Nikolai Platonovich, in essence, is truly one of those influential figures who meticulously created the very Putin as we perceive him today. Right now,
We haven't forgotten anyone or anything.
Nikolai Patrušev supports Putin's policies and helps him plunder Russia. It is Patrušev who gives Putin those very folders that conceal the real state of affairs and the deaths at the front.
With that, we conclude our episode. We continue right now to follow the most relevant events so we can tell you about them first. Don't forget to subscribe. See you